The desert stretched far in every direction, endless waves of sand rising and falling like a silent ocean. The human exploration ship, Aurora, had landed on the cracked ground near the ruins of tall stone towers. The crew stepped out, their boots sinking into the hot dust. Captain Myra walked in front, her eyes fixed on the strange shapes rising from the dunes. The towers were broken, leaning as if time itself had bent them. No signs of life moved between them, only the constant hiss of dry wind. The crew had searched many worlds before, but this one felt different. It felt heavy, as if the silence itself was watching them. "This place is older than anything we have seen," said Tom, the engineer. He brushed sand from his gloves and adjusted his scanner. "I am not picking up power readings, but there is something underground. Something big." Navigator Paul raised his head toward the largest tower. Half of its base was buried, but he noticed a square shape hidden under the sand near the ruins. "Over here," he called. The crew gathered, and together they began digging. The sand was stubborn, sliding back into the hole with every move, but after hours of work a stone door was revealed. The door was covered in carvings of circles and lines, symbols none of them could understand. Myra stepped closer, her hand resting on the surface. The stone was cold despite the heat of the desert. "This is no ordinary ruin," she said. "We are meant to find this." Tom ran his scanner over the surface. "It is sealed tight, but not broken. The ground hides a staircase beneath it. If we can open it, there may be chambers below." Paul frowned. "Should we? The structure might collapse. And we do not know what was buried here." Myra's voice was calm but firm. "We came to explore. If we stop at the first mystery, then why are we here at all? Open it." The crew worked with tools, pulling at the edges until the heavy stone moved with a deep groan. Dust filled the air as the door slid aside. Beneath it, stairs spiraled into the darkness below. A chill drifted upward, carrying the smell of stone untouched for ages. Lila, the scientist, switched on her lantern. "Air is breathable. Old, but safe enough." One by one, they descended the stairs, their lights casting long shadows on the walls. The sound of their steps echoed, each footfall swallowed quickly by the silence. The deeper they went, the more uneasy they felt, as if the air itself grew thicker. At last the stairs ended in a vast chamber. The crew stopped, their lights spreading across the floor, and gasps escaped their lips. Before them stood hundreds of statues, tall and shining, each one made of gold. They stood in perfect lines, row after row, reaching far into the chamber's depths. Every statue was different. Some were tall with wide shoulders, others thin with strange limbs. Some had wings carved behind them, others had faces unlike anything human. Yet every statue looked alive. Their eyes were filled with expressions of sorrow, fear, pride, and defiance. Paul whispered, "It is like a hall of kings." "No," Lila said softly. She stepped closer to one statue, raising her lantern. The figure's mouth was open in a silent cry. "This is not glory. This is suffering." Tom placed his hand against another statue. "It feels warm," he said, pulling back quickly. "Like it is not fully metal." Myra looked over the chamber, her heart beating faster. Treasure hunters would call this the greatest find in history. A hall of golden statues on a forgotten world. Yet to her, it felt wrong. It felt less like treasure and more like a warning. "Do not touch anything until we understand this," Myra ordered. "Mark the chamber. Lila, record every detail. Tom, check the structure. We need to know how long this has been buried." As the crew spread out, their lanterns lit the golden figures in flickering light. Shadows danced on the walls, making the statues seem as if they shifted in place. Paul felt a chill as he walked between two rows. The faces stared at him from every side, and though he knew they were lifeless, he could not escape the feeling of being judged. He whispered to himself, "Why does it feel like they are watching us?" Far above, the wind howled through the ruins, but no sound reached the chamber. Down below, the silence wrapped around the crew like a heavy cloak. Captain Myra stood in the center, her gaze fixed on the golden army around them. She could not shake the thought that this chamber had waited a very long time for someone to open it. The crew had expected ruins of stone and dust. Instead, they had uncovered a secret that glittered with a terrible beauty. The forgotten chamber of golden statues had been found, and with it came questions that none of them were ready to answer. The crew stood in the chamber surrounded by golden figures, their lanterns spreading weak light across the endless rows. The statues looked alive, yet lifeless at the same time, frozen in expressions that stirred unease in every human heart. Tom adjusted his scanner once more, hoping to make sense of what they had uncovered. "I am reading strange pulses," he said. "Not mechanical, not like normal energy. More like something buried inside them. It comes and goes, almost like a rhythm." Lila raised an eyebrow. "Rhythm? You mean like a heartbeat?" Tom nodded slowly, uneasy with his own words. "Yes. That is the closest I can explain." Paul shook his head. He had been walking between two rows, studying the statues carefully. His lantern reflected on one figure with long arms and sharp features. Without thinking, he stretched out his hand and touched its shoulder. A jolt ran through him. His hand recoiled at once. "It moved," he whispered. "I swear it moved." Myra turned sharply. "Do not touch them. Not until we know what they are." Paul's face grew pale. "Captain, it was not just metal. It felt alive. I cannot explain it, but for a second, I thought it looked at me." The crew exchanged worried looks. Myra herself felt a cold knot inside her chest. She wanted to deny Paul's words, yet she could not forget the warmth Tom had described. Statues did not carry warmth. Statues did not pulse like a living body. Lila stepped closer to the nearest wall. She had noticed something unusual there. The carvings stretched across the smooth stone, different from the symbols on the door. Lines and circles twisted into shapes that looked like warnings, but none of them could read the alien script. Still, the patterns gave off a sense of urgency. "These are not decorations," Lila said. "They are warnings. Look at the repeating marks, like a hand raised in caution." She traced the shapes with her gloved fingers. "Whoever built this place wanted to tell a story, or maybe keep others away." Tom frowned. If this is a warning, then it was hidden too well. No one could see these marks until the chamber was opened. "Maybe that was the point," Myra replied. Her voice was low, but firm. "This place was meant to stay buried." The silence in the chamber deepened as if the statues were listening to their conversation. Paul shifted uneasily, the light of his lantern trembling in his hands. The eyes of the golden figures seemed to shine faintly, though he knew it was only the reflection of light. "I do not like this," Paul muttered. "I feel like we have stepped into something we should have left alone." Myra ignored the unease rising in her chest and gave her orders. "Tom, keep scanning. Lila, record every wall carving and symbol. Paul, check if we can send a message back to the ship." Paul set up the comm device and tried to transmit a signal to the Aurora. The machine blinked, lights flashing red. He adjusted the frequency, tried again, and again. Finally, he turned toward Myra, his face grim. "No signal. It is like the walls are eating the waves. Nothing goes through." Tom looked up from his scanner. "That makes no sense. Even heavy stone should not block this level of tech. It is almost like the chamber was built to trap communication." Myra felt the weight of his words. Trapped. That was exactly how the air around her felt. Thick and heavy, as if the chamber itself wanted them to remain here. Lila was still studying the wall. She turned suddenly, her eyes wide. "Captain, come here. Look at this part." Myra joined her, lantern raised high. The carvings formed a clear image, rows of tall figures standing in lines, just like the golden statues around them. At the edge of the image was a group of smaller beings, kneeling as if in fear. The figures of gold stood above them, arms raised like rulers. "This is not art," Lila whispered. "This is history. These statues were once living beings." Tom stepped closer. "Turned into gold? Is that even possible?" Lila shook her head. "I do not know. But look at their faces. These are not peaceful poses. They are trapped, caught in their final moments." The crew went quiet, staring at the endless rows of golden eyes reflecting their lantern light. Paul broke the silence. "If they were alive once, then who did this to them? And why?" Myra's voice was calm, but her hand tightened on the strap of her pack. "We do not know yet. But we will find out. Keep your heads clear. Fear will not help us." Still, she could not ignore the feeling pressing against her chest. Every step deeper into this chamber made her wonder if they were not explorers anymore, but intruders. As they regrouped near the center of the chamber, a soft sound echoed. It was faint, like the crack of stone under pressure. Everyone froze, their lanterns swinging across the rows. The statues remained still, yet the sound lingered. Tom swallowed hard. "Captain, that was not the rock. That came from one of them." The golden figures stood silent, shining in the lantern glow. Yet to Myra, they no longer looked frozen. They looked patient. Waiting. The warnings on the wall, the sealed door, the silence that killed their signals, all of it pointed to one truth. This chamber was not meant to display treasures. It was meant to keep something hidden. And now, it was no longer hidden. The air inside the chamber grew heavier with each passing minute. The lanterns flickered, their light dancing across golden faces frozen in fear and pride. The crew of the Aurora moved carefully, but every step seemed to echo louder than the last. Lila crouched beside one of the statues, her scanner humming softly. She traced its chest with the beam, her face tense as she studied the reading. "Captain," she called. "You need to see this." Myra approached, her boots crunching on the stone floor. "What is it?" Lila turned the screen toward her. The image showed layers beneath the gold surface. Inside the solid metal was a shape. Not empty space, but something organic. A skeleton, curled and still. "These are not statues," Lila said in a low voice. "They are bodies. Living beings sealed inside metal." Tom leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. "Sealed? You mean they were put in here alive?" Lila nodded, though the thought seemed to weigh on her. "The readings are strange. The bodies are not decayed. It is as if time stopped for them. Their organs, their cells, everything is preserved." Paul stepped back, his lantern shaking in his hand. "So they are still alive?" "I cannot say alive," Lila answered. "But not dead either. Trapped, suspended in this golden shell." Silence followed her words. The crew looked around at the endless rows of figures. Hundreds, maybe thousands, each one a living being frozen in gold. Myra's jaw tightened. Whoever built this chamber did not build a hall of honor. This is a prison. As if in answer, the ground trembled. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Across the floor, golden lines that had been invisible a moment before began to glow. Symbols lit up along the walls, spreading like fire. The chamber itself seemed to wake. Paul stumbled back, fear clear on his face. "Captain, what did we just do?" Tom's scanner beeped wildly. "The energy is rising. It is coming from the statues. They are reacting to us being here." Myra steadied herself as the shaking grew stronger. The stone door they had opened at the top of the stairs rumbled, then slammed shut with a thunderous sound. The echo rolled through the chamber, and the crew knew instantly that their exit was gone. They were trapped. "Stay calm," Myra ordered. She tried to keep her voice steady, though her heart raced. "Check for another exit. This chamber must have more than one path." The crew spread out, but every wall was smooth stone carved with warnings they could not read. No doorways, no tunnels, only the sealed entrance above. The golden light along the floor pulsed in a steady rhythm, as if the chamber had a heartbeat of its own. Lila stared at the glowing lines. "It is a system," she said, her voice filled with awe and dread. "The chamber was designed to activate when disturbed. We have awakened it." Tom kicked at the wall in frustration. This was a trap all along. The statues, the carvings, the silence, it was all meant to keep people away. Myra moved to the center, surrounded by the golden prisoners. She felt the weight of countless eyes upon her, though none of them moved. Her crew looked to her for answers, but she had none. She had led them here, and now they were locked in a place that felt alive. Then the air changed. A low hum filled the chamber, rising like a chorus. The golden figures began to shimmer. Their faces did not move, but the faint sound seemed to come from them, a whispering note that brushed against the edges of thought. Paul clutched his head. "Do you hear that? It is not sound, it is inside my mind." The others nodded, their faces pale. The whisper was not words yet, but it was growing clearer, pressing into their thoughts like an unseen hand. Myra stood firm, though her skin prickled with unease. "Whatever this is, do not let it control you. Stay focused." The whisper rose again, stronger now. It felt like voices layered together, countless voices speaking as one. The crew could not understand the language, but the meaning pressed through. Judgment. Punishment. Prison. Lila gasped. "They are telling us what this place is. These statues were sentenced. Locked away forever in this golden shell." Tom's eyes widened. "But who sentenced them? And for what?" Before anyone could answer, another tremor rolled through the chamber. The lanterns shook, casting wild shadows. Several of the statues trembled, the golden shells vibrating as if something inside was trying to break free. The whisper grew louder, sharper. Myra clenched her fists. She could not understand the full message, but she felt the warning clear as day. The chamber was not only a prison for the golden figures. It was also a test for anyone who dared to open it. Paul's voice cracked. "Captain, what if we are next?" Myra looked at her crew, then at the endless rows of shining prisoners. Fear clawed at her, but she forced her voice to stay strong. "We will not be prisoners. We will find a way out. Humanity does not bow to fear. Not here, not anywhere." The chamber pulsed in response, the golden lines glowing brighter. It felt as if the place itself had heard her. The whispering grew louder, clearer, almost like a voice forming words. The crew huddled together, their hearts racing. They had uncovered not treasure, but a prison of forgotten beings. And now, the prison was awake. The chamber glowed brighter with each passing moment. Golden light pulsed across the walls, running through the carvings like rivers of fire. The statues shimmered, their surfaces trembling as if they wanted to wake. The crew of the Aurora stood close together, their lanterns useless now against the strange glow that filled every corner of the chamber. Myra raised her hand, signaling her team to hold their ground. Her heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. "Stay calm. Do not separate. Whatever this is, we face it together." The air grew heavy, thick enough to make each breath feel like a burden. Then, without warning, a voice thundered inside their minds. It was deep and ancient, not carried by sound but by thought. Every crew member flinched as the words filled them. "You have entered the chamber of judgment. The crew froze. Paul whispered, though his lips barely moved. "Did you hear that?" "We all did," Myra replied. Her chest tightened, but she stood firm. "It is speaking to us." The voice echoed again, rolling through their heads. "This place was built by the first ones, a race that walked the stars before your kind rose from dust. Those who sought to enslave and conquer were brought here. Their crimes were sealed in gold, their freedom stolen forever." Lila's face turned pale as she looked around at the countless golden figures. "That means these statues are criminals. Beings who tried to rule others." But the voice continued, louder now. "Do not be deceived by their silence. These are not statues. These are prisoners. Their greed and hunger for power poisoned worlds. They were judged, and they remain here as a warning." Tom clenched his fists. "Judged by who? By this chamber? By you?" The voice shook through the walls like a storm. "By us, the guardians of balance. And now you, humans, stand where they stood. You, too, hunger for power. You fight, you destroy, you enslave your own kind. You are not different." Paul took a step back, fear clear in his eyes. "It knows about us. About Earth." Myra raised her chin. Her voice cut through the growing dread. "We are not the same as them. Humanity has made mistakes, yes, but we have learned. We build, we protect, we reach for the stars not to enslave, but to explore." The chamber rumbled at her words. Several statues trembled violently, cracks running across their golden surfaces. A low hum filled the chamber, and the crew pressed closer together. The voice returned, softer but sharper, as if it sought to pierce their minds. "You speak of unity, yet your history bleeds with war. You speak of peace, yet your kind still hungers for dominion. Tell me, Captain of Earth, why should you be spared the same fate?" Lila grabbed Myra's arm. "Do not answer. It is testing us." But Myra did not turn away. She looked at the glowing walls, the endless eyes of gold staring at her. "Because we are more than our mistakes," she said firmly. "Because we can change. Every species must fight its past to build a future. We are not perfect, but we are not hopeless." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then the golden lines along the walls flickered, dimmed, and surged again, brighter than before. The voice grew louder. "Hope is fragile. Power is stronger. That is the law of the stars. That is why these prisoners stand before you, locked in eternal shells." Tom stepped forward, his voice rough. "If you are so powerful, then why test us at all? If humanity is doomed, end it. But if you want to know what we are, then watch us. We do not bend. We do not surrender." The chamber roared, the hum turning into a storm of sound that shook the very floor. Several statues shook so violently that cracks spread across their bodies. Small flakes of gold broke free, clattering to the ground. Paul shielded his face from the glow. "They are waking. Captain, what do we do?" Myra's hand tightened around her lantern, though its flame looked weak against the golden storm. She raised her voice, forcing it to echo above the hum. "We do what humans always do. We fight for each other. We fight for our right to exist. If this chamber wants to test us, then we will show it who we are." The statues continued to tremble, some bending as if struggling against their golden shells. The crew could hear faint sounds now, voices trapped within the metal, whispers of fear and anger. The voice returned once more, its tone filled with judgment. "Then prove your words, humans. Prove that you are not as they were. The trial begins now." The glow in the chamber flared to a blinding brightness. The carvings on the walls shifted, shaping themselves into visions of war, fire, and destruction. Images of Earth's darkest days appeared around them: battles, suffering, greed. The crew saw their own world laid bare before them, twisted into the chamber's warning. Paul gasped, covering his eyes. It knows everything. It is showing us our worst history. Myra felt the weight of the vision pressing against her mind, but she stood tall. Her voice rang out, steady and defiant. We will not be broken by the past. We are more than what you show us. Humanity is more. The chamber seemed to hesitate. The hum faded for a heartbeat, as if the voice itself was considering her words. Then the glow pulsed once more, brighter than ever. Then you will be tested. Survive the trial, or join them in gold. The chamber fell into silence, but the crew knew the test had begun. The forgotten chamber of golden statues had awakened, and now it demanded proof of what humanity truly was. The golden chamber no longer felt like stone and metal. Its walls shifted with glowing visions, changing the room into a living nightmare. The crew stood close, their hearts racing, as images surrounded them on every side. They were no longer looking at statues. They were staring into the darkest parts of human history. Myra clenched her fists as the walls showed battlefields filled with smoke. Soldiers charged against one another, weapons raised high, screams echoing through the chamber. Cities burned, skies blackened with fire. The scenes shifted again, showing crowds starving while leaders lived in luxury. The cruelty of humanity played out like a cruel performance, and the chamber made sure no flaw was hidden. Paul stumbled back, covering his face. It knows everything. Every failure. Every sin of our kind. Tom growled in frustration. This is not fair. We are more than this. The voice of the chamber pressed into their minds again. This is the truth of your kind. War, greed, betrayal. You are no different from the prisoners who stand frozen in gold. Why should you be spared? Lila's breathing grew heavy as the visions twisted again. This time she saw something personal. Her own lab on Earth, years ago, when she had begged officials to fund her research. They had ignored her, choosing profit over discovery. She remembered her anger, her hopelessness. The vision brought back the pain so sharply that tears filled her eyes. No, she whispered, shaking her head. That was real, but it is not all of me. I chose to keep going. I chose to fight for science, not give up. The vision around her flickered, as if the chamber was uncertain. Next, Tom fell to his knees as an image rose before him. He saw a ship, years ago, the one he had worked on as a young engineer. He had made a mistake then, a small error in calculations. That mistake had caused a system to fail. People had died. The guilt never left him, and now the chamber forced him to relieve it. Tom's voice cracked. Yes, I failed. I made a mistake. But I learned. I swore I would never allow carelessness again. My hands build to protect now, not destroy. He stood, forcing himself to face the glowing walls. You cannot define me by one mistake. The chamber trembled, the hum deepening. The voice returned, harsher now. And what of you, Captain? What will you say for your kind? The visions turned toward Myra. She saw warships across the stars, human fleets armed with weapons meant for conquest. She saw greed on Earth, nations rising and falling in endless struggle. She saw the past she could not deny. For a moment, doubt struck her. What if the chamber was right? What if humanity was no different from the golden prisoners around them? But then she thought of her crew. She thought of their courage, their struggles, their hope. She thought of the countless people on Earth who dreamed not of conquest, but of peace, discovery, and family. Myra raised her voice, strong and clear. We are not perfect. We have scars. But we are not only war and greed. We are also hope and courage. We fight, yes, but not just to conquer. We fight to protect. We fight to survive. And when we make mistakes, we rise again. That is what makes us human. The chamber pulsed, light flashing across the rows of statues. The golden shells shuddered, cracks spreading through several of them. From inside came muffled sounds, like voices trying to break free. Paul clutched Myra's shoulder. "Captain, something is happening. Look." One statue split open at the chest, shards of gold falling to the ground. Inside, a figure gasped for air, its alien body frail and trembling. The chamber's glow dimmed for a moment, as if it had lost strength. Lila hurried to the alien, supporting its weight. "It is alive. After all these years, it is still alive." The voice of the chamber returned, quieter now, less certain. "You resist. You claim hope. You fight the weight of your past. Few have spoken so. Few have dared." Myra stepped forward, her words carrying across the chamber. "Because we are human. We are not defined by our darkness. We are defined by our will to rise above it." The visions began to fade, the burning cities and battlefields dissolving into golden dust. The hum softened, and the statues grew still once more. Yet the cracks remained, proof that the chamber had listened. Tom exhaled, his body trembling. "Did we pass? Is it over?" Myra shook her head. She looked at the freed alien, its eyes filled with pain and gratitude. "No. This was only the beginning. The chamber wanted to see if we would surrender to our past. We did not. That is why it let this one live." Paul's voice was quiet, filled with both fear and hope. "Then what comes next?" Myra looked at the endless golden rows and the glowing walls. She did not know the full answer, but she felt it deep inside. The chamber was not finished with them. Humanity's test had only begun, and its outcome would decide more than their lives. The chamber grew quiet after the visions faded, but the silence was different now. It was no longer heavy with judgment. Instead, it carried a strange tension, as if the room itself was waiting for something to happen. The crew stood close together, lanterns flickering weakly against the golden glow. At their feet lay shards of broken shell, where one alien had been freed. The alien's body was thin and pale, its limbs trembling after centuries of being trapped. Lila held it carefully, checking its weak pulse. "It is alive," she said softly, her eyes wide with wonder. "After so long, it still lives." The alien lifted its head, its dark eyes filled with pain and exhaustion. Words formed from its lips, weak and broken, yet clear enough. "Not guilty, not all." Myra crouched beside it, her voice gentle. "You were sealed here? With the others?" The alien nodded slowly. "Some were conquerors. But others resisted. We fought them. We would not bow. Yet we were locked away too." Tom's face hardened. So this chamber punished the guilty and the innocent alike. The alien closed its eyes, as if remembering. "Justice without mercy becomes cruelty. We were forgotten." Myra's heart tightened. She looked across the chamber at the endless rows of statues. If the alien spoke truth, then not all the golden figures were tyrants. Some had been fighters, defenders, even victims. And all of them had been trapped for ages. The chamber pulsed faintly, its golden lines flickering like a heartbeat. The deep voice returned, filling their minds. Few resisted. Many were guilty. All were sealed. Myra rose to her feet, her voice sharp. "You punished without reason. You trapped those who fought for freedom alongside those who tried to enslave. That is not justice. That is fear." The chamber trembled, as though angered by her defiance. The statues shuddered, a wave of motion rippling through the rows. Cracks spread across several golden shells. Paul raised his lantern. "Captain, they are waking. More of them." Indeed, thin lines of light split across the bodies of at least a dozen statues. Fragments began to fall, revealing glimpses of strange skin, trembling limbs, and faces that gasped for air after centuries of silence. The sound of breaking gold echoed like thunder through the chamber. Lila rushed to one of them, helping free its arm. "They are weak, but alive." Tom joined her, using his tools to break away fragments of the golden shell. "We cannot free them all, but we can help as many as we can reach." The chamber's voice rose again, filled with thunder. "Why do you aid them? Why do you risk yourself for strangers? You are human. You seek gain. You seek survival." Myra stood firm, her voice strong. "Because that is what makes us human. We choose to protect, even when there is no reward. We choose to give hope to others, even when we fear for ourselves. That is the truth of our kind." The chamber pulsed, the golden light surging across the walls. For a moment, the crew feared it would strike them down. But instead, the glow dimmed slightly, as though it was listening. The newly freed aliens gathered near Myra and her crew. Their bodies were weak, their voices faint, but their eyes shone with gratitude. One of them, tall and thin with silver markings across its face, looked directly at Myra. "You are not like those who sealed us. You free us." Paul's voice trembled with awe. "They believe in us." Myra looked at the freed ones, then at her crew. "This is our proof. We are not conquerors. We are builders. We are defenders. Let the chamber see that." The statues around them continued to tremble, more cracks spreading, more fragments falling. The chamber hummed, its voice quieter now. "You resist judgment. You claim hope. Perhaps your kind has strength beyond greed." Tom wiped sweat from his brow. "Captain, I think it is beginning to accept us." Lila smiled faintly, though her hands were still busy helping a frail alien stand. "Not just accept us. It is testing if we can choose mercy when we could walk away." The chamber glowed again, but this time it was not blinding or harsh. It was softer, like the first light of dawn. The air grew warmer, and the heavy pressure that had weighed on the crew's chests began to fade. The freed aliens looked around, their voices joining in a strange harmony. "We are witnesses. Humanity showed kindness when fear could rule. Humanity chose mercy when judgment could destroy." Myra felt strength return to her. The chamber might not fully trust them yet, but it had seen something different. Something worth remembering. The statues no longer looked like silent prisoners waiting to be judged. They looked like lives waiting to be restored. Humanity had given them a chance to wake again, and in that act, the crew of the Aurora had proven something greater than any word could carry. The chamber had set the test. Humanity had chosen its answer. And the awakening had only just begun. The golden chamber glowed with a softer light now. The heavy feeling of judgment that had once pressed on every breath was gone. In its place was a quiet stillness, as if the room itself had finally released a weight it had carried for centuries. Myra and her crew stood among the freed aliens, each of them trembling but alive, their eyes filled with both fear and hope. The chamber's voice returned, but it no longer thundered like before. It spoke in a calm tone, like an old teacher addressing its pupils. "Humanity has chosen mercy. Humanity has chosen to help when there was nothing to gain. You are different from the conquerors I once feared." Myra stepped forward. Her voice was steady. "We are not perfect, but we try to learn. We try to build instead of destroy. If we are to be judged, let it be by our choices, not the shadows of the past." The walls of the chamber rippled with light, forming shapes and images. They showed the galaxy as it once was, with empires rising and falling. Then the light shifted, showing the long silence after the conquerors were gone. The statues, sealed in gold, had been left as reminders of what unchecked power could do. But now, new images formed. The chamber showed Myra's crew standing with the freed aliens. It showed humanity reaching out to other worlds. It showed hands joining, different in shape and color, but linked by trust. Tom whispered under his breath, "It is rewriting the record. It is adding us to its story." The chamber spoke again. "The test is complete. This chamber will no longer be a prison. It will become a place of memory, where truth is kept and shared. Humanity has proven worthy to carry its legacy." The golden shells that still covered countless statues began to crumble. But instead of breaking to reveal living bodies, many of them collapsed into dust. The crew realized that not all had survived the long silence. Yet even as some turned to nothing, others opened with faint light, revealing more who still breathed. Lila helped one of them stand, her hands steady. "Some can still be saved. That is enough. They are not forgotten anymore." Paul looked around in awe. "We came here thinking this was only a ruin. Instead, we found survivors and a history older than we ever imagined." Myra nodded. "And now we carry their story back to the stars. That is our duty." The freed aliens gathered in a circle, speaking in their own soft language. Their words carried rhythm, almost like music. Then one of them, tall with silver markings across its face, turned to Myra. "You have given us freedom after ages of silence. You are not conquerors. You are guardians. We will tell others of this day." The chamber pulsed once more, brighter than ever, before its voice faded into silence. "Carry the memory. Do not repeat the past. Humanity has been judged, and humanity has chosen hope." A deep rumble echoed as a hidden passage opened at the far end of the chamber. Beyond it lay a path lined with golden light, leading upward. The crew knew it was their way out. As they prepared to leave, Tom looked back at the endless rows of statues, now silent and broken. Strange. For so long this place was feared as a tomb. But now, it feels like a library, holding stories instead of prisoners. Myra placed a hand on his shoulder. "That is the legacy. Not fear. Not punishment. But memory." They guided the freed aliens through the glowing passage. Step by step, the heavy chamber fell behind them, replaced by open air. When they emerged from the ancient structure, the night sky stretched wide above. The stars glittered, brighter than ever. For the first time since they had entered, they felt the full weight of freedom. The aliens looked up, their voices whispering in awe. To them, the sky was no longer out of reach. It was open once more. Paul laughed softly. "We came for answers, and instead we gave freedom. Not a bad trade." Myra's eyes stayed on the stars. "This is not the end. The galaxy will hear of what happened here. Humanity will not be forgotten. We will be remembered as those who freed the lost." Lila smiled faintly. "The chamber asked if we would choose mercy. We did. That choice will carry farther than we know." Together they returned to the Aurora. The ship's lights glowed as the ramp lowered, welcoming them back. The freed aliens followed, still weak but filled with hope. As the engines hummed to life, Myra looked back at the distant golden structure one last time. It stood tall and quiet against the horizon, no longer a prison but a beacon. The Aurora rose into the night sky, carrying not only its human crew but also the survivors of another age. The chamber had passed its legacy onto them, and they would carry it across the stars. In that moment, Myra knew the truth. Humanity had been tested, and they had answered with mercy. They had turned a place of judgment into a place of hope. And that was something worth remembering for all time.